Breaking news at this moment. Trump doubling down on Matt Gaetz as his pick for Attorney General.
Mr. President, are you reconsidering the nomination of Matt Gaetz?
No.
That comes as we are learning tonight the confidential files, including a deposition with a woman who says she had sex with Gaetz when she was 17 years old, have been breached. Gaetz, meanwhile, is working the phones on his own behalf, trying to get senators to commit to backing him for Attorney General. Manu Raju is out front on Capitol Hill speaking to all of those senators. And Trump tonight, Manu, standing by Gaetz. Tonight, though, more GOP senators are calling for the release of that House Ethics Committee report, which will be crucial. And, we know this. It's got a lot of damning information in it.
Yeah, potential clash is brewing between the House and the Senate Republicans. In fact, the incoming Republican chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, which will consider this nomination, Chuck Grassley, told me that if they do not receive this report, it could slow down the consideration of this nomination. Even as Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, is defending his decision to call on the House Ethics Committee to withhold that report, contending that former members like Matt Gaetz, who abruptly resigned last week, should not be subjected to these ethics reports to come out into the public, even though there have been instances where former members have seen their ethics reports come out. Now, I asked senators about that argument from Mike Johnson, and some senators, including Mike Rounds of South Dakota, pushed back.
I think if there is an ethics report out there that is being or that has been completed, then I think the Senate is going to want to see it. It may very well speed up the vetting process. On the other hand, if it's not available and we have to recreate it ourselves, that would delay our ability to make a decision on a very critical nominee.
If you were to recess appoint any of these nominees who were rejected by the Senate.
I think a recess appointment is going to be very challenging.
And that last point could become critical because Donald Trump has called on these appointments to be installed via a recess appointment, essentially bypassing the Senate altogether. But you can hear there some pushback there. And Aaron Gaetz behind the scenes is trying to lock down support. He's been calling individual Republican senators. And tomorrow, J.D. Vance, the vice president-elect, will be on Capitol Hill with Gaetz, meeting with some senators as they try to lock down support and reassure them over their concerns. But unclear, Aaron, if this House Ethics report will become public. That panel meeting behind closed doors tomorrow to decide how to proceed.
We're getting new information about very confidential files that were breached, including a deposition with a woman who says she had sex with Gaetz when she was 17 years old. CNN's chief legal affairs correspondent, Paula Reed, is working the story for us. What are you learning, Paula?
Well, Wolf, yesterday we reported on this civil litigation down in Florida. This is a lawsuit brought by a friend of former Congressman Matt Gaetz. And as a result of this lawsuit, through the discovery process, they created this whole new trove of evidence, including depositions with, as you just noted, the woman who says she was just 17 when she had sex with Gaetz, as well as other women who were at the party when this alleged encounter took place. They've created this evidence that sources tell us the House Ethics Committee has used in its probe. We've been told that the Ethics Committee has really looked at this lawsuit as a roadmap in terms of who to talk to and what kind of evidence they can gather. And we have learned that some of the records in this case, they are confidential, including that deposition with a 17-year-old girl that is under seal. It's only available to the lawyers involved in the case. And these confidential records, they are stored in a secure online document sharing system. And we've learned that lawyers in the case were notified by another lawyer yesterday that that secure online system was accessed by an unknown third party who had access to that sensitive material that, again, we believe is similar to what could be in the House ethics report. Now, we asked at least one of the lawyers if they had notified authorities about this third-party breach, but we haven't gotten a comment. And of course, this development comes as the House Ethics Committee is going to meet tomorrow to discuss that report. It's unclear, though, if that report will be released. Wolf?
All right, Paula Reed reporting. Paula, thank you very much. President-elect Trump was asked about the controversy surrounding Matt Gaetz just a little while ago, and he doubled down, insisting he is not reconsidering his choice for Attorney General. But concerns are clearly mounting right now up on Capitol Hill. CNN's chief congressional correspondent, Manu Raju, is following all of this for us. Manu, Gaetz is now calling Republican senators, asking them to, quote, give him a shot.
Yeah, he is, in fact, doing that. And tomorrow, Gaetz is expected to be on Capitol Hill with the Vice President-elect, J.D. Vance, meeting with some key senators on the Senate Judiciary Committee, trying to lock down support. But there are growing number of Republican senators who want to see that House ethics report that goes into allegations of sexual misconduct with Matt Gaetz, which Gaetz has denied, including some Republicans who could weigh in whether they would vote for him or not, or have raised serious concerns like Senator Lisa Murkowski.
I would like to see our committees do their full job. I'm not interested in a process that would just say, well, because the president has named him and you have Republican chairs coming into the new Congress, that we just move people out. There needs to be legitimate vetting. When I say legitimate, I mean just thorough vetting that the committees do. This is our job.
But don't these sexual misconduct allegations, including sex with a minor, give you pause?
Well, this is what I mean. I mean, this is the right response to that, Manu, is we can either play the hearsay game where it's drip, 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 this person said this person said that, or we could say we're going to move forward with the confirmation process and we're going to allow him to address all of this and lay out his vision for the department. And
sexual misconduct or statutory rape in the case of Matt Gaetz is disqualifying.
Of course, Gaetz has denied those allegations, but tomorrow, Wolf, the House Ethics Committee will meet behind closed doors and they weigh how to proceed with this report. If a majority of that 10-member committee votes to release it, that could become public. But Wolf, that would require one Republican to join with Democrats. It's unclear if that will happen. And then whether the report will actually come and see the light of day remains an open question, even as GOP senators demand it. Wolf.
All right, Manu Raju up on Capitol Hill. Thank you very much. I want to get some reaction now from our political experts who are standing by. Ana Navarro, let me start with you. Trump says he's not reconsidering Gaetz for Attorney General, even as he's privately acknowledging the odds of his confirmation by the Senate aren't good. What do you think is going on here?
I actually believe that. There's people who think that Matt Gaetz is being used as a sacrificial lamb by Trump so that he can get all his other appointees through. I don't believe that. I think that Donald Trump feels himself invincible with the win he had with a Republican Congress, with a Supreme Court that's given him basically immunity. I think he feels he has no guardrails. I think he feels these Republican senators owe him, that they wouldn't be in the majority but for him, and that they're going to make it happen for him. Also, we know that Donald Trump is not a person who admits mistakes, is not a person who has regrets or apologizes. He doubles down and he tries to ram things through. Look, I remember when Kimba Woods and Zoe Baird, Attorney General appointees of Bill Clinton, had to withdraw because of issues with a nanny. I remember when Neera Tanden, who was an appointee of Joe Biden's, had to withdraw because she had written some pithy, controversial tweets. These are a whole bunch of different standards or lack thereof when it comes to Donald Trump appointees, right? It's not just Gaetz, it's Hegseth, it's RFK, it's Tulsi Gabbard. And, pick one that you're going to battle with.
Let me get Scott Jennings into this conversation. Scott, Trump is working the phone himself for Gaetz, calling senators. Is it good for the GOP for Trump to spend his political capital forcing senators to vote for someone accused of paying a minor for sex?
Yeah, great question. And obviously there's going to be tremendous resistance to Gaetz. And I don't know how successful Donald Trump is going to be at this. I mean, this goes beyond just the handful of senators who normally have problems with Donald Trump or who have feuded with him over issues in the past. I think the resistance to Gaetz goes into people who would say they strongly support Donald Trump but have serious concerns about this. So we'll see if he sticks with it. You know, there's still a lot of time between now and the next Congress convening. And at some point, you know, when you're the president and you've got a nominee for anything, you have to ask yourself, do I want to suffer a defeat? Most people don't get defeated. They just withdraw from the process. It is obvious that all this information that's coming out about Gaetz, whether the House Ethics Committee acts to release their report or not, is going to find its way into the hands of the Senate. They're going to, I think I saw John Cornyn say tonight that they can just re-interview all the same witnesses that interviewed with the Ethics Committee. So I think of all the nominees that are sitting up there right now, I just put Gaetz in a separate category. There's more resistance to him than anybody else, and obviously more issues coming out by the day.
Bakari Sellers is with us as well. Bakari, Elon Musk is also weighing in on this, posting on X that Gaetz has, and I'm quoting him now, a spine of steel and an axe to grind, end quote, and adding, and I'm quoting once again, Gates will be our hammer of justice. Is that the role of the Attorney General, you think, to be a hammer with an axe to grind?
It's definitely not when you are a chief judicial officer and the person who is supposed to administer justice fairly and freely and without any intrusion or interference from other branches of government. Elon Musk has his thumb on the scale of government far too much. I mean, I think that his input, I think his impact, I think that the transactional nature of both the organization that he and Vivek Ramaswamy are supposed to lead, as well as the fact that he has just been feeding off of the United States government throughout most of his career to build his businesses. He's a brilliant man, but his impact and input on this government, I believe, will find to be wrought with conflicts of interest. But I think that Scott and Anna were both very, very correct. I mean, I don't necessarily care for Kristi Noem's politics, and I think we can have a robust discussion about policy, et cetera, but she's somebody who probably needs to be voted in. I mean, you look at Mehmet Oz over CMS. I mean, you don't necessarily care for the campaign he run, or maybe have disagreements over politics, but you have the president gets to choose their cabinet. But when you come to people like Hesketh, when you come to people like Tulsi Gabbard, when you come to people like Matt Gaetz, and you have these sincere and serious character flaws that lead into something else, I think the country has to take a pause, and I'm glad that the Senate, all of them, including Republicans, are taking that role seriously.
Anna, as Bakari just mentioned, Trump is naming another TV host to his administration, naming Dr. Mehmet Oz to lead the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, which impacts millions of Americans who rely on Medicare and Medicaid. Is he qualified, do you believe, for that role?
Look, that's a role, that's an answer that has to be found out by the members of the Senate. Certainly there's concerns, right, and there's concerns that should be asked about, right? His quackery, his misinformation during the beginning part of COVID-19, some of his financial interests. So look, if Donald Trump wants to fill his cabinet with TV people, that's up to him. But they need to be qualified, and that is up to the Senate.
Scott, how do you see it?
Yeah, Dr. Oz, I think, is likely to make it because, principally, I've already read tonight that both of his home state senators, who he ran against, by the way, Senator-elect Dave McCormick, has thrown his support behind him. And even John Fetterman has already said, as long as he is committed to protecting Social Security and Medicare, I think we need to give him a chance. So when you have the support of your home state senators, two guys from two different parties that you've run against, I think that bodes well for your nomination. Normally, the person who takes this job really, really loves spreadsheets. And it's true, Dr. Oz is a TV person, but he's also a very celebrated and very decorated surgeon. And so I think he obviously has an interest in public service. That's why he ran for the Senate in the first place. The fact that he wants to do this, I think, is a good thing, because we do need to attract people into government who have a sincere interest in public service. And the fact that his former opponents are for him, I love that tonight. So I think this is a good nomination. And of course, he'll have to go through the same hearings. But this is going to work out, hopefully, for President Trump.
Tomorrow, the House Ethics Committee is expected to discuss the fate of its report on Matt Gaetz, the former Florida congressman who's both accused of having sex with a minor and Donald Trump's choice for Attorney General of the United States. Donald Trump shows no sign of changing his mind. As we first reported last night, he's calling senators who will have to vote on the nomination, including North Dakota's Kevin Cramer, standing there next to Elon Musk at today's SpaceX launch in Texas. The president-elect was asked about Gaetz just a few minutes later.
Mr. President, are you reconsidering the nomination of Matt Gaetz?
No.
How far are you willing to go to get him confirmed?
As you saw, he didn't answer that. As for Gaetz himself, CNN has learned that he's also been calling senators and will be visiting with some on the Hill tomorrow. At the same time, some of the confidential material used by the Ethics Committee may be out in the wild somewhere. Multiple sources tell us that someone gained unauthorized access to several documents, including a deposition with a woman who says she had sex with Gaetz when she was 17 years old. And tonight, the lawyer for two accusers sat down with CNN's Aaron Burnett. Joel Lepard told his clients, told the Ethics Committee that Gaetz paid his clients about $10,000 for sex over 2 years, and that their allegations, he believed, represent only a fraction of what the committee has learned.
You have to understand that my clients are only two out of the over a dozen witnesses that testified. I was present for two of those. And so what I'm telling you is just a fraction of the evidence that's available of the thousands of documents, and the 25 subpoenas, 12 witnesses.
So and I guess that's a crucial part of this. The House Ethics Committee is scheduled to make its decision on releasing their full report. Do you think the allegations you're talking about here and detailing, which have to do with your two clients, are a large chunk of their report, or do you think that this is the tip of the iceberg?
Well, I do think that's probably the tip of the iceberg.
Again, though, the president-elect is standing by Gates. So is Elon Musk, who posted this about him on social media, quoting now, Matt Gaetz has 3 critical assets that are needed for the AG role: a big brain, a spine of steel, and an axe to grind. He is the Judge Dredd America needs to clean up a corrupt system and put powerful bad actors in prison. Gaetz, he concludes, will be our hammer of justice, which may sound like the name of a pro wrestler, but Linda McMahon, who co-founded what would become the WWE wrestling empire, is actually expected to be tapped to become the next Secretary of Education. And once again tonight, a lot happening both in the open and behind the scenes, which is why we start things off with CNN's Caitlin Collins, anchor of The Source at the top of the hour. So, Caitlin, we heard the president-elect saying he's not second-guessing his choice of Matt Gaetz. What are you hearing about what's going on behind the scenes?
Well, yeah, Anderson, I mean, he's not until he is. That's kind of how things work in Trump's orbit, where he'll stand by someone. We've seen this before, but that doesn't necessarily mean that won't always be the case. Right now, it is certainly the case behind the scenes. We've been talking to Trump's allies and advisors all day about this and what this is going to look like. And right now, the president-elect is willing to use his political capital to stand by his pick for the attorney general. He wants to see him confirmed. He has doubted his chances of actually getting confirmed because, I mean, he's being told the truth by his advisors as they've been having conversations with Republicans on Capitol Hill. But right now, Anderson, they are standing behind him. We're seeing Senator J.D. Vance, who is the vice president-elect, go up with Matt Gaetz and these other nominees to Capitol Hill in the coming days. They're going to be trying to meet with these Republican senators and trying to convince them to at least give them a chance to consider this nomination, to not be opposed to it right away. But that comes as we're also seeing more Republican senators come out and say this idea of a recess appointment or sidestepping the Senate confirmation process and having that confirmation hearing, it's just not going to work with them. Tom Tillis just said that a few moments ago to reporters on Capitol Hill, saying that he doesn't believe anyone should want to be confirmed in a high-profile position by recess, and that the Senate should not, get rid of its responsibility here in terms of vetting these nominees to do so. So I think that's really the question here, is not necessarily whether Trump is standing by him, it's whether the Senate Republicans are going to be willing enough to vote for him. And we've heard some skeptical voices at Mar-a-Lago tonight about whether or not that's going to happen. They have a very clear-eyed view, Anderson, of how this is all shaping out right now.
Is the Trump team expecting any pushback on the choices of Mehmet Oz to run Medicare or oversee Medicare and Medicaid, and Linda McMahon to run the Department of Education?
We've heard from some of them who say, when you look at the slate of picks here, because there are these more controversial nominees that are getting all of the attention right now, it could help the others sail through. I mean, these are some of these nominees who 4 years ago or 8 years ago, Anderson, would not have had an easy confirmation process. I mean, Trump making his personal attorney, naming him as the Deputy Attorney General, would have been considered controversial a few months ago or a few weeks ago, but now, given how these dynamics have shaken out, he has shifted the spectrum here and where these senators are operating from and what they're looking at. With Mehmet Oz, of course, he ran for Senate unsuccessfully in 2022, but he is being tapped to lead a very powerful agency in the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. I mean, it insures about 150 million Americans, and it operates under the tent of HHS, which of course Trump has nominated RFK Jr. to run. So if both of those individuals get confirmed, they would be leading figures within that department. And I think that is going to be how you're seeing senators look at this, because they are deeply familiar with Mehmet Oz, not just because he tried to join that body a few years ago, but he was actually called to a Senate panel about a decade ago, Anderson, where he was grilled by senators on his promotion of weight loss drugs that were not proven to work, using his TV personality. And so they're looking at all of that right now. But Anderson, it's moving very quickly here as they're trying to finish these other positions. I should note, J.D. Vance has confirmed last night he and Trump were looking and interviewing potential candidates to be the FBI director. That is the clearest signal yet that Trump plans to fire Chris Wray, who still has 3 years left of his 10-year term that Trump appointed him to.
Yeah, Caitlin Collins, thanks very much. We'll see you on The Source at the top of the hour. We'll have more on Dr. Ozen shortly. But first, the Gates pick and how far the president-elect may be willing to go for it. Joining us, Republican strategist Shermichael Singleton, former Pennsylvania Republican Congressman Charlie Dent, and journalist Gretchen Carlson, co-founder of the organization Lift Our Voices. I mean, Gretchen, given the kind of drip on this so far, and who knows if this thing has been hacked, what may come out, how far do you think the president-elect will go to keep Gates?
Yeah, look, I think the headline in this whole story is being vastly undersold. It's interesting to me that 3 of Trump's top 3 picks have sexual misconduct allegations against them. You know, as an advocate for women and girls on these issues, and on behalf of so many women, we find it highly offensive that that's not an automatic disqualifier off the bat. And the idea that that can just be brushed aside and never mentioned, and that Matt Gaetz is going to be a hammer for justice, well, that's why releasing this report is so important. There are survivors of sexual misconduct in Congress. So I'm hoping that they have a conscience along with other people. You know, you have Senators Grassley and Cornyn, Republicans on Senate Judiciary, which is responsible for investigating these appointees or nominations. They're asking for the House Ethics Report to be released. And if it's not tomorrow, look, there are other ways this could happen. It could be leaked. And it could also be shared in secret over at the House if the senators just went over to look at it.
Congressman, do you think if the House Ethics Chair, you were the former House Ethics Chair, do you think if the committee's meeting proceeds as scheduled tomorrow, that the Gates report will be released? I mean, we should remind people the Ethics Committee is pretty unique. It's evenly split between Republicans and Democrats.
Well, hard to say what the committee will do. I don't think the Speaker did. Mike Guest, the chairman of the committee, who's a good man, put him in a tough spot. But look, this report, I believe, does need to be released. Ordinarily, when a member of Congress resigns because of a scandal, they usually go away quietly. They go about the business of reconstructing their lives, relationships with family members, and their reputations. They don't get elevated to the Attorney General of the United States, the top law enforcement officer of the country. And we have, as Gretchen pointed out, the United States Senate, as part of their official record and official duties in this confirmation process, want to see this report before they vote on this really important position. So
Congressman, you do know you are referring to a time when there was shame.
Well, yeah, I understand that, Anderson. But still, look, Matt Gaetz, there are ways to get this report out if the committee chooses not to send it out. A member can go to the floor of the House and make a motion essentially to have it released from the committee. And then there would be a vote of the full House. And given the fact that Matt Gaetz doesn't have a whole lot of friends in the House of Representatives, I suspect that motion would pass overwhelmingly. So I think it would behoove everybody if they just simply released it. I was chairman of the committee. There's plenty of precedent for releasing reports of former members. One for sexual misconduct in 1990. The individual was involved with sex with a 16-year-old, and the report was released after he resigned. And there are other cases like that. So I don't understand what the big fuss is.
Sure, Michael. I mean, Elon Musk is saying it's great that Gaetz has a, quote, axe to grind. I mean, is that a great quality to have in an attorney general?
Well, look, I think the president-elect has been pretty clear about what he expects out of many of the individuals he's appointed, and that is to completely shake up many of these agencies, particularly the Department of Justice, based on his experiences, his legal experiences, that is. And he's been pretty clear that he believes federal prosecutors have too much influence, too much power, and a significant amount of discretion that he would like to see changed or limited. And I think a lot of Americans would probably agree with that. As a political strategist, however, I'm looking at this from 2 different perspectives. If you're
but you think a lot of Americans would agree that it's good to have an axe to grind?
I think a lot of Americans would agree that the Department of Justice needs to radically be changed, Anderson. I mean, I think if you found yourself prosecuted on trumped-up charges, let's say you're not a wealthy individual or a powerful individual such as the president-elect, you would probably look at the criminal justice system and say this system does not work for the vast majority of people, particularly if you're poor. That's my point.
Do you, but do you think? Sure, but do you think Gaetz is being sent there to cure the ills of the criminal justice system as it relates to people who are underserved and can't afford attorneys, which is certainly a valid point that, yes, obviously, you know, if you have can afford an attorney, you have a better chance somebody gets a public defender who are overworked and you know, understaffed. But I don't think that's what he's aiming to do. Do you?
Well, I think the president-elect's premise is pretty clear on this point. radically transform and shake up the agency. And I think a part of shaking up the agency would be indeed limiting the power of some of those federal prosecutors who have a significant amount of power, which oftentimes go unchecked. And so we could argue whether or not Gates or someone else is the best person to move forward with that agenda, but I think the premise of the agenda remains consistent, whether it's Gates or ultimately someone else who's confirmed by the U.S. Senate.
Congressman, just to respond to that, I mean, as somebody who served, is an axe to grind a quality you want in an attorney general?
No, absolutely not. In fact, you want an attorney general who's going to exercise measured judgment and discretion. You know, this is a really powerful position, and you need somebody there who's not going there to torch the place, to burn it down. I mean, sure, the Department of Justice needs reform, like so many of our departments do, but we have people there who I just can't have somebody in there who does have an axe to grind and wants to destroy the place. I mean, they're upset about what? That Trump is being prosecuted over his handling of classified documents? Had I done that, I'd have been taken out in handcuffs as a member of Congress. I mean, that's what I'm trying to understand. I mean, what's the problem here?
Gretchen, it does seem for, you know, obviously the former president, now the president-elect, has railed about the weaponization of the FBI, the Department of Justice. I mean, setting up Matt Gaetz to be the Attorney General with an axe to grind, I mean, that is a weapon.
That serves right into Trump's dialogue about what he was going to do, right? And we've said from the start, at least I have, that I believe everything he says. He said we're going to get rid of the enemy within. And he feels he was wrongly accused and prosecuted, and he somehow convinced a heck of a lot of voters that that was the case. So I guess he's looking at this like an eye for an eye. He's going to put somebody in there and get his justice. But I still go back to what I said earlier, is that we should be discussing what disqualifies Gaetz from the beginning, which is this sexual misconduct charge, potentially, and the report should be released.
Yeah. Sure, Michael, I mean, if the Gaetz nomination does get pulled or he's defeated in the Senate, is there a political cost to the president-elect? I mean, doesn't really, I guess in the past there might have been, but it doesn't seem like there would be with this. Do you think so?
No, I don't think so. I mean, look, Caitlin Collins, at the top of the show, advised or reported how many of the advisors, I should say, have advised the president-elect on how this may go. He's clearly standing behind Gaetz as it currently stands. He has the political capital and the momentum, I would argue, to do so. But they're also advising President-elect there's a good chance that this may not move forward the way we want. I'm almost certain if they're good advisors, and many of them absolutely are, they're experienced political practitioners, they're likely already looking at other individuals to present to the president-elect to say, hey, here's some alternatives in case we do lose this battle. That's what a good advisor should do. But if the president-elect is saying, hey, this is my guy, I want to stand by him at least for now, then those advisors, their job is to make those calls to those Republican senators and attempt to articulate the president-elect's case. And if those staffers are saying, well, we hear you, but this is what our bosses are saying in the Senate, then they're going to report that news back to the president and ultimately say, Mr. President, here are our options here.
Yeah.
What decision do you want to make?